On my 18th birthday, my father tossed a $50 bill at me and said, "Get out, I'm done paying for another man's mistake." He thought it was the ultimate insult. I picked up the money, smiled, and handed him a sealed envelope I'd kept for years. "I know," I replied. "And my real father is waiting outside." He looked out the window, and his face turned gray. This is my story. Imagine this: on my 18th birthday, the man who raised me, the man I called Dad, threw a crumpled $50 bill at my face and told me to get out. His exact words? "I'm done paying for another man's mistake." He'd waited 18 years for that moment. 18 years of cold silence, of whispered insults, of missed recitals, all leading to this. He thought that $50 and a slammed door would be the end of my story. He had no idea it was just the beginning. But to truly understand that day, that betrayal, we have to go back. Back 10 years, to when I was just 8 years old. That's when I first felt it, that chilling sense of being different. It was the spring recital at Highlands Ranch Elementary, and I was so ready. I'd practiced for release for 3 months straight. My tiny fingers knew every single note by heart. My mom, Linda, sat in the front row, phone out, recording every second, wearing her favorite blue dress, the one she saved for special occasions. The seat next to her, though? It was empty. Richard had a last-minute meeting, Mom told me when I asked. But even at 8, a knot of confusion tightened in my stomach. Richard never had last-minute meetings. When Tyler had his soccer games. Tyler was 4 then, and Richard attended every single match, even the ones where my little brother just picked dandelions on the field instead of playing. After the recital, I found Mom in the hallway. Her eyes were red, but she smiled, told me I was wonderful. "Why doesn't Daddy ever come to my things?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just hugged me, tighter than usual. That night I couldn't sleep. I crept downstairs for water and heard voices in the kitchen. Richard and Mom. They didn't know I was listening. "I told you I can't pretend forever," Richard snapped. "Every time I look at her, I see the mistake you made." Mom's voice was softer, pleading. "She's a child, Richard. She's innocent in all of this." And then, the words that shattered my 8-year-old world. "She's not my child. She never was. And the day she turns 18, she's out of this house." I didn't understand mistake. I didn't know why Richard looked at me like I was a stranger, while Tyler was his entire world. But I understood this. Whatever was fundamentally wrong with me, it made my mother cry. I crept back to my room, no water, no comfort. And that night, I started counting. Not the days until I could escape, but the days until I could finally understand why I was never enough. The emotional wounds festered, but the difference between Tyler and me wasn't just about feelings. It was about cold, hard cash. And by the time I turned 16, I had the receipts to prove it. Literally. It was September of my junior year, and SAT registration was due. I needed $200 to $150 for the test, $50 for prep books. I approached Richard in his home office, where he sat surrounded by spreadsheets, lord of his domain at Mercer Holloway Properties, a commercial real estate firm where he was vice president of business development. "I need money for the SAT," I said, straight to the point. I'd learned years ago that Richard preferred efficiency over pleasantries. He didn't even look up. "Get a job. The registration deadline is in 2 weeks. I don't have time to. Tyler needs new soccer cleats. The good ones cost $350. I can't be throwing money at everyone." $350 for designer cleats for a 14-year-old who would outgrow them in 6 months. That was apparently an investment. But $200 for my college entrance exam was throwing money. So I got a job. Minimum wage, 15 hours a week, slinging coffee at a place called Brewed Awakening. It took me 3 months just to save enough for that test and the prep books. Oh, and my phone bill? Yeah, Richard had conveniently removed me from the family plan when I turned 15. Tyler, of course, got a brand new iPhone every September. No questions asked? No explanations needed. When my SAT scores came back, a 1480 out of 1600, 96th percentile, I left the report on the kitchen counter, where everyone could see it. No one mentioned it. Not Richard. Not Karen, his second wife. Not even Tyler, who probably wouldn't have understood what the numbers meant anyway. Mom would have been so proud. She'd been gone for 4 years by then, taken by breast cancer when I was 12. But I like to believe she was watching, somehow. That somewhere, she saw me. I never asked Richard for money again. If I had to build my future entirely alone, then so be it. But I also started keeping a record. Every single disparity, every subtle slight, every dollar that flowed to Tyler while I scraped by. I didn't know it then, but that quiet, meticulous record, it would become my weapon. My mother died on a Tuesday in November. She was 41. I was 12. The cancer had been aggressive, 14 agonizing months from diagnosis to the end. I spent most of that year sitting beside her hospital bed, reading aloud from her favorite books while the machines beat their steady rhythm. 3 days before she passed, Mom asked the nurses to give us privacy. She was weak, her voice barely a whisper, but her grip on my hand was surprisingly strong. "There's a letter," she said. "In my jewelry box. The one with the roses on the lid." I knew the box. It sat on her dresser, filled with pieces she never wore anymore, a pearl necklace from her mother, a silver bracelet from her college graduation. "Don't open it until you're 16, she whispered. "Promise me, Athena." 16. I asked why 16, and she just said, "Because you'll be old enough to understand. And strong enough to handle it." I promised. I would have promised her anything. 3 days later she was gone. I was holding her hand, my world shattering around me. And Richard? He stood in the doorway, checking his watch. 11 months after the funeral, Richard married Karen. She was a real estate agent he'd met at a company event, blonde, polished, eager to play the role of Mrs. Mercer. Karen's first act as stepmother was to reorganize the house. Mom's clothes went to donation. Her books went to storage. Her jewelry box nearly went to the attic, but I grabbed it first. "That's mine," I choked out, clutching it to my chest. Karen shot a glance at Richard. He just shrugged, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "Let her keep it. It's just junk." Just junk? It was all I had left. I hid that box, tucked away behind dusty winter coats, and I waited. For long years. I kept my promise. I had no idea that one faded letter held the keys to my entire universe. That it would change everything. On my 16th birthday, I opened the jewelry box. It was a Saturday morning. Karen had taken Tyler to a travel soccer tournament in Colorado Springs. Richard was at the golf course, Cherry Hills Country Club, where he spent most weekends pretending to be more important than he was. I sat on my bed with the rose-covered box in my lap. My hands trembled so hard, the paper rattled as I lifted the lid and found the envelope tucked beneath a strand of pearls. My name was written on the front in Mom's handwriting, Athena. The letter was 3 pages long on her personal stationery, dated August 15, 2019, 2 months before her diagnosis. I read it twice before the words truly sank in. "My darling Athena, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're old enough to know the truth. Richard is not your biological father. Before I married him, I had a brief relationship with a man named Marcus Holloway. It ended when he got engaged to someone else. I didn't know I was pregnant until after he was gone. Richard was pursuing me at the time, and I made a decision I've regretted ever since. I married him and let him believe you were his. He found out when you were 3. He discovered a DNA test I'd hidden. He's known the truth for 15 years, Athena. He chose to stay silent because he didn't want the embarrassment of admitting his wife had been with another man. I'm sorry I never told you. I was afraid of losing you, but you deserve to know who you are. Marcus never knew about you. That wasn't fair to him either. This letter has been notarized and filed with my attorney, Eleanor Vance, at Vance & Associates. She has instructions to help you if you ever need it. You are not a mistake, Athena. You are the best thing I ever did, and your real father deserves to know you exist. Asterisk all my love, forever, Mom. I sat there for an hour, reading it over and over. Everything clicked. Every sideways glance, every muttered insult, every single disparity. It all made chilling, horrifying sense. And nothing would ever be the same. That night I typed, Marcus Holloway Denver, into Google. The results were overwhelming. Marcus Holloway, CEO and co-founder of Holloway Capital Partners, a private equity fund specializing in commercial real estate and renewable energy assets under management. $2.3 billion. I actually whispered the word billion with a B. There were photos, a tall man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, the same shade as mine. He wore tailored suits, standing at podiums or shaking hands with governors and mayors. But the detail that made my heart stop was buried in a Denver Business Journal article from March 2022. Holloway Capital continues to dominate Colorado's commercial real estate market, outbidding smaller competitors in at least 7 major deals over the past decade. The article named one of those smaller competitors, Mercer Holloway Properties. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. The company Richard worked for, Mercer Holloway Properties, it had Holloway in the name because Marcus had co-founded it 20 years ago. They'd had a nasty business dispute, split up, and while Marcus went on to build a multi-billion-dollar empire, Richard remained a frustrated vice president at the very firm they'd started together. Richard hated Marcus Holloway. I'd heard him complain for years about that arrogant bastard at dinner parties, blaming Marcus for every deal that fell through, every contract lost to a higher bidder. And now I knew why Richard looked at me with such contempt. Every time Richard looked at me, he didn't just see another man's mistake. He saw Marcus Holloway, the man who had beaten him at everything. Business. And apparently, my mother's heart. The question burned in my mind, did Marcus Holloway even want to know I existed? I knew I couldn't rush it. I waited 6 agonizing months, meticulously planning. I had to be strategic. In September of my senior year, I wrote a letter to Marcus Holloway. Not an email. A physical letter, sent to Holloway Capital Partners headquarters in downtown Denver. I included a copy of Mom's letter and a simple request, an independent DNA test to confirm the truth. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I checked the mailbox every single day, my stomach churning with a mixture of hope and dread. On day 18, a response arrived. Not from Marcus directly, but from his attorney. The letter was brief and professional. Mr. Holloway was willing to undergo DNA testing at GenTrust Labs, a certified facility. An appointment had been scheduled for October 15th. The test took 5 minutes, a cheek swab, some paperwork, a promise that results would arrive within 2 weeks. On November 8th, I received the report. Case number GT 2023-1108 AM. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. 3 days later, my phone rang. An unknown number. Athena, a deep, measured voice said. This is Marcus Holloway. I just received the results. My throat seized up. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I didn't know about you, he continued, his voice softer now. Your mother never told me. But now that I know, I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that. And in that moment, I believed him. Truly. And with that, I walked out. Richard thought he'd won. He thought he'd finally gotten rid of me. He had no idea. His nightmare was just beginning. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, and you're enjoying my story, please do hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. More unbelievable stories are definitely coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Asterisk March 15th arrived. Cold and gray. The sky heavy with clouds that couldn't decide whether to rain or snow. I woke at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before my alarm. For a moment I lay still, staring at the ceiling of the room I'd slept in for 18 years. The walls were bare now. I'd taken down the posters and photos weeks ago, packing them into boxes that sat in the corner, ready to go. Today was the day. I felt it in every single bone. I showered, dressed in jeans and a navy sweater, and went downstairs. The kitchen smelled like coffee and toast. Karen stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone. Tyler sat at the table, shoveling cereal into his mouth while watching something on his iPad. Either of them looked up. No happy birthday. No card. No cake. I hadn't expected any of it, not really. But the absence, it still twisted a knife in my gut. Richard sat at the head of the table, burying his face in the Denver Post. No acknowledgement from him either, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. He'd been waiting for this day for years. Waiting to finally get rid of me. I poured myself a glass of orange juice and glanced out the window. And there it was. A sleek black Mercedes S-Class, parked discreetly at the corner of our street, just visible through the bare branches of the oak tree in our front yard. Marcus was already here. Waiting. The envelope in my jacket pocket felt impossibly heavy. It held the DNA results, Mom's letter, and a photo of Marcus and me from 2 months ago, our very first meeting at a coffee shop downtown. I took a slow, deep breath. Whatever came next, I was ready. Richard finally lowered his paper. "We need to talk," he said, his voice as cold as the March morning. Then, he reached into his wallet. He didn't hand it to me. He threw it. A crisp $50 bill, fluttering onto the table right next to my untouched orange juice. "You're 18 now," he sneered. "I'm done." I just stared at that $50 bill. Ulysses S. Grant's face stared back, utterly indifferent. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "You heard me," he snarled, his words flat, rehearsed. He'd clearly practiced this moment. "I fulfilled my legal obligation. You're an adult. Get out." Karen, bless her heart, finally lowered her phone. "Richard, maybe we should." But he cut her off. His eyes were locked on mine, burning with 18 years of simmering resentment. "I've known since you were 3 years old." He spat, the words a venomous spray. "You're not my daughter. You never were. I only kept you around because your mother begged me, and because I didn't want people asking questions." Tyler, for the first time all morning, looked up from his iPad. His mouth actually dropped open, cereal forgotten. "But Linda's gone now," Richard continued, his voice rising. "And I'm not paying for another man's mistake anymore." Another man's mistake. The exact same words I'd overheard when I was 8 years old. It echoed through me. I picked up that $50 bill. Slowly. Deliberately. I refused to let him see my hands shake. "You think this is an insult?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's more than you deserve." I almost smiled. Almost. "I know," I continued. "I've known for 2 years." Richard's expression flickered. Confusion. Then suspicion. Then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the envelope, and set it directly in front of him. "Open it." He hesitated, then, with a tremor, tore it open. I watched his face. Saw his eyes scan the DNA results, then Mom's familiar handwriting on the letter. The color drained from his face, leaving it ashen. "And my real father," I said, my voice clear and firm, "is waiting outside." Richard's head snapped toward the window. The black Mercedes. The driver's door opening. A tall man with silver hair stepping onto the sidewalk. Marcus Holloway. Richard's face went from pale to ghostly gray. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." I watched Richard watch Marcus. The man who had tormented me for 18 years, who had made me feel worthless, unwanted, invisible, was frozen in place. His hand gripped the DNA report so tightly that the paper crumpled at the edges. And then Marcus Holloway walked up our driveway. With the unhurried, undeniable confidence of a man who had absolutely nothing to prove. He wore a charcoal overcoat, leather gloves. His silver hair, perfectly styled, even in the blustery March wind. That's impossible, Richard choked out, his voice barely a breath. You and him. Linda. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Before you. I clarified, my gaze fixed on him. Before she ever even knew you existed. Karen was ghostly pale, her eyes darting between Richard and the window, desperately trying to piece together the shattered reality. Tyler had completely abandoned his iPad, his teenage apathy replaced by pure, wide-eyed shock. You planned this. Richard's voice cracked with a terrifying mix of fury and fear. You've been planning this for 2 years. I have, I confirmed. Ever since I found Mom's letter. Ever since I learned that you knew the truth, and still punished me for it. The doorbell rang. Once. Twice. No one moved. I'll get it, I said, my voice a whisper of steel. My heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my steps were steady. I felt Richard's eyes burning into my back, heard Karen's frantic whispers about, who even knows what? Social standing, probably. I opened the door. And there he stood. Marcus Holloway. His blue eyes, my blue eyes, met mine. Ready? He asked, a gentle smile. Ready, I breathed, turning back for one last look at Richard. He was still frozen by the kitchen table, the crumpled $50 bill forgotten on the floor. Goodbye, Richard, I said. And meant it. Marcus didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped past me, into the foyer. His presence, calm and commanding, filled the space in a way Richard never, ever could. Richard? Marcus's voice was calm, almost pleasant. It's been a while. Richard found his footing. Get out of my house, he bellowed. I'm here to collect my daughter, Marcus replied, his voice calm, cutting through Richard's bluster. The one you just threw out with a $50 bill. He glanced at the crumpled money on the floor. Generous of you. She's not your. Richard stopped himself. The DNA results were still in his hand, the evidence undeniable. 99.97%. Marcus said, a cool, precise delivery. GenTrust Labs doesn't make mistakes. Neither did Linda, apparently, when she chose not to tell me. Richard, Karen finally squeaked, her voice thin. Who is this man? Marcus Holloway. Richard spat, the name pure poison. My former business partner. The one who's been sabotaging my deals for years. Sabotaging? Marcus raised an elegant eyebrow. I believe the word you're looking for, Richard, is outperforming. There's a difference. I stood by the door, watching the confrontation unfold. Part of me wanted to intervene, but a larger part understood, this moment wasn't about me. It was about Richard finally facing the consequences of his cruelty. You think you've won something? Richard lunged closer to Marcus, his fists clenched, face contorted. Taking her doesn't change anything. She's still Linda's mistake. She's still. Marcus's voice dropped, losing every trace of its pleasant veneer. That's my daughter you're talking about, Richard. And I've spent the last 6 months learning exactly how you've treated her. The words hung heavy in the air, a silent accusation. I know about the SAT money you refused her. Marcus continued, his voice dangerously low. The phone plan you cut. The trust fund you've been draining. All of it. Richard's face went from white to a ghastly green. How? He stammered. It doesn't matter how, Marcus retorted, pulling a thick manila folder from his overcoat. What matters is that everything you've done to Athena will have consequences. Starting today. He set the folder on the counter, right in front of Karen, who flinched like it might bite her. Linda left Athena a trust fund, Marcus explained, his voice flat. $180,000. To be managed by her legal guardian until she turned 18. He flipped open the folder. That guardian was you, Richard. Richard's jaw tightened. I had every right to access those funds. Raising a child is expensive. Is it? Marcus pulled out a spreadsheet, bank statements highlighted. According to these records, you withdrew $47,000 over the past 5 years for child-rearing expenses. He turned to me. Athena, did Richard pay for your SAT registration? No. Your phone bill? No. School supplies? Clothes? Extracurriculars? I paid for everything myself, I said, working at a coffee shop. Marcus turned back to Richard. So where did $47,000 go? A heavy silence fell. Karen's eyes darted to the spreadsheet. I saw her expression shift, not guilt, exactly, but a cold, dawning recognition. She knew exactly where that $47,000 had gone. Tyler's endless soccer camps. Tyler's private coaching. Tyler's parade of new electronics. That's embezzlement, Richard, Marcus said, his voice surprisingly quiet, but utterly chilling. Under Colorado law, a trustee who misappropriates funds can be held personally liable. Plus interest. Plus legal fees. You can't prove, I already have. Marcus tapped the folder. My attorney, Eleanor Vance, has been reviewing these records for months. The same Eleanor Vance your wife, Linda, hired to protect Athena's interests before she died. Richard looked like he might be sick. We'll discuss this more, Marcus said, after the gala. One more thing. Marcus pulled a second document from the folder, a printed email, complete with headers and timestamps. Richard's face went from white to a sickly green. September 12, 2018. Marcus read aloud, holding up the printed email. From Richard Mercer to your personal attorney. Subject: inheritance issue. Confidential. Asterisk: I need to know my options for minimizing inheritance obligations to a child who is not biologically mine. Specifically, can I exclude her from my will without disclosing the reason? And what happens to her mother's trust fund if the child is removed from the household before age 18? Asterisk. Karen gasped. Even Tyler looked disturbed. Where did you get that? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Your company's IT department isn't as loyal as you think, Marcus said. Especially when they're offered better opportunities elsewhere. I hadn't known about this email. Marcus had mentioned he was gathering evidence, but I didn't realize how deep he'd dug. You've been planning to cut me out since I was 12. I said, the words clear and steady, cutting through the stunned silence. Before Mom even died. Richard couldn't meet my eyes. The gala is in 1 week, Marcus said, calmly tucking the documents back into the folder. I suggest you spend that time consulting with your lawyer. Because after Saturday night, everyone in Denver's business community will know exactly what kind of man you are. He extended his hand to me. Athena, he said, let's go. I took one last look. At Karen's frozen, terrified expression. At Tyler's utter confusion. At Richard's crumbling composure. Then I walked out that door. With my father. My real father. The week after my birthday, I moved into a guest apartment in Marcus's building downtown, a sleek high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was temporary, just until I started college in the fall. But it felt like a different planet compared to the house in Highlands Ranch. For the first few days, I just let myself breathe. I unpacked my boxes. I explored the neighborhood. I had dinner with Marcus twice. Awkward but genuine conversations where we tried to fill 18 years of silence. Then the attacks began. On Tuesday, March 18th, I received a call from my high school principal. Richard had contacted her claiming I was emotionally unstable and fabricating stories about my family. He suggested I might need a psychological evaluation before graduation. The principal, thankfully, knew me well enough to be skeptical, but the call shook me to my core. On Thursday, an email arrived from the University of Colorado Boulder's admissions office. Subject line: clarification needed. Asterisk: Dear Miss Anderson, we have received information suggesting inconsistencies in your financial aid application. Specifically, concerns have been raised about your family's situation and guardianship status. Please contact our office to schedule a meeting before your enrollment can be finalized. Deadline: April 1 SD. Asterisk I stared at that email for 10 minutes before calling Marcus. He's trying to destroy my future. I cried, my voice tight with fear. He can't hurt me directly anymore, so he's going after everything I built. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor Vance will handle the university and the principal, he said calmly. Richard is digging his own grave, Athena. He just doesn't know it yet. I didn't understand. What do you mean? The gala is Saturday, he simply stated. He'll be there to accept his award. And so will we. I didn't understand yet, but I would. Richard wasn't just going to lose. He was going to lose in front of everyone who mattered to him. The 15th Annual Denver Chamber of Commerce Charity Gala was the social event of the spring season. I learned this from Marcus, who explained it over dinner on Friday night, the eve of the event. 400 guests, he explained, cutting into his steak. Business leaders, investors, city officials, everyone who matters in Denver's commercial real estate world will be there. And Richard, he's being honored as Developer of the Year. Marcus's smile was thin, almost predatory. An award he's been campaigning for since 2019. It's the validation he's always wanted. Proof that he belongs among the city's elite. I pushed my salad around my plate. So we're going to take that away from him? Marcus set down his knife and fork. No, Athena. We're going to let him take it away from himself. All we have to do is show up. I thought about Richard, probably at home right now, rehearsing his acceptance speech, practicing his humble smile in the mirror, imagining the applause, the handshakes, the photos that would appear in the Denver Business Journal. He had no idea the earthquake that was about to hit. What should I wear? I asked. Marcus smiled. A real smile this time, warm and paternal. I had something delivered to your apartment this afternoon. Consider it a birthday gift. Saturday, March 22nd, 7:30 p.m. The navy blue gown fit like a second skin. Floor-length silk, elegant, understated, yet absolutely commanding. Marcus had chosen perfectly. We arrived at the Four Seasons together, his hand steady on my elbow as we walked through the gilded lobby. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across marble floors. Well-dressed couples mingled near the bar, their laughter echoing off high ceilings. I'd never been to anything like this. My world had been coffee shops and high school hallways, not ballrooms and champagne flutes. But I kept my chin high, my shoulders back. Channeling every single ounce of composure I'd painstakingly developed over 18 years of surviving Richard's household. We entered the ballroom at 7:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone, wanting to remember every detail. The room was stunning, round tables draped in white linen, centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus, a stage at the far end with a podium and a massive screen displaying the Chamber of Commerce logo. And there, near the bar, stood Richard. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Karen was beside him in a red dress, laughing at something one of the investors said. Richard held a champagne flute, gesturing expansively as he told some story about a recent deal. And then, he saw me. His champagne flute froze, halfway to his lips. His eyes darted from my face to Marcus, then back to me. I watched, fascinated, as the color drained from his cheeks in real time. He excused himself from his group and strode toward us, his expression murderous. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snarled, abandoning all pretense. "I was invited," I said, my voice impossibly calm. "My father is the lead sponsor." Heads whipped around. Phones appeared like magic. A collective gasp, then whispers. "Father? Did she say father?" Karen appeared at his elbow, her face tight with alarm. "Richard, not here, please." He shook her off. "No. Everyone needs to know what's happening here." He pointed at me, his finger trembling with rage. "This girl is not my daughter. She's the product of my late wife's affair. A bastard I was forced to raise for 18 years. Gasps erupted. Murmurs. I saw at least 3 phones rise, cameras openly pointed at us. Perfect. I gave her a roof over her head. Richard continued, his voice rising, spiraling. I fed her. I clothed her. And this is how she repays me? By showing up here with him. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Richard was doing all the work himself. She's a liar and a manipulator, just like her mother. He raged, completely unhinged. Linda fooled me for years. And now her daughter is trying to do the same thing. Don't believe a word she says. The ballroom had gone quiet. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. I felt Marcus's hand on my shoulder. Steady. Reassuring. A silent anchor. Are you finished? I asked Richard. His face was scarlet now, veins visible at his temples. I'm just getting started. You think you can ruin me? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. I looked at him, really looked at him, for what might be the last time. I don't need to ruin you, Richard, I said softly, but with absolute conviction. You're doing that perfectly well all by yourself. From the corner of my eye, I saw Marcus walking toward the stage. It was time. The MC, a silver-haired woman in a black sequined dress, tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. It's time to begin our program. Please welcome our lead sponsor and keynote speaker, Mr. Marcus Holloway. Applause filled the ballroom. Marcus climbed the steps to the stage with the easy confidence of a man who had addressed thousands of audiences. He shook the MC's hand, adjusted the microphone, and smiled out at the crowd. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. The Denver Chamber of Commerce Charity Gala has raised over $12 million for children's literacy programs over the past 15 years. That's something we should all be proud of. More applause. Richard had retreated to his table, his face still flushed, Karen whispering urgently in his ear. Tonight, Marcus continued, his voice resonating through the hushed room. I want to talk about something personal. About family. About the choices we make, and the consequences that follow. A ripple of intrigued whispers went through the crowd. This was not your typical sponsor speech. 20 years ago, he began, his gaze sweeping the room. I made a choice I've regretted ever since. I walked away from someone I cared about, foolishly believing I had better options. I didn't know then that she was carrying my child. The whispers intensified. I saw heads turning, searching for context. 6 months ago, I received a letter from a remarkable young woman. She had spent 2 years meticulously researching her own history, gathering every piece of evidence, building her case. Not for revenge, but for truth. For the right to simply know where she came from. Marcus looked directly at me. My heart hammered. That young woman is here tonight. And I'd like to introduce her to you, not as a secret. Not as a scandal. But as my daughter. He extended his hand toward me. Athena, he said, his voice brimming with a tenderness I hadn't known existed. Would you join me on stage? The walk to that stage felt like it took an eternity. 400 faces fixed on me. 400 pairs of eyes tracking my every single step. I heard whispers. Holloway's daughter? Who is she? Did he say 18 years? I climbed the stairs and took Marcus's hand. He pulled me gently to his side, facing the crowd. This, Marcus said into the microphone, is Athena Anderson. Or as I hope she'll allow me to call her someday. Athena Holloway. My daughter. The applause started slowly, then built. Not everyone clapped. Some were too stunned, others too busy processing, but enough did that the sound filled the room. Athena spent 18 years in a household that didn't want her. Marcus continued, his voice calm, but with an underlying steel. She was told she was a mistake. She was denied basic support, while her stepbrother received everything. She paid for her own SAT registration by working at a coffee shop because the man who was supposed to be her guardian refused to give her $200. I glanced at Richard's table. His face was ashen. Karen had her hand clamped over her mouth. The other guests at their table were physically leaning away from them, as if Richard's disgrace was suddenly contagious. Despite all of that, Marcus said, his voice swelling with pride. Athena graduated with a 3.9 GPA. She scored in the 96th percentile on her SATs. She earned a partial scholarship to the University of Colorado Boulder. She did all of this alone. Without help. Without support. Without anyone telling her she was worthy. He turned to me, his eyes glistening. I missed 18 years of your life, Athena. I can't get those back. But I can promise you this, from today forward, you will never be alone again. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight, so I just nodded and squeezed his hand. The applause was deafening. Marcus gestured toward the side of the stage where a woman in a tailored gray suit stood waiting. For those who might question the validity of what I've shared, allow me to introduce Eleanor Vance, senior partner at Vance & Associates. Miss Vance has been the custodian of the documentation that proves Athena's parentage. Eleanor stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate respect. She was in her late 40s, with sharp features and the composed demeanor of someone who had spent decades in courtrooms. Good evening, she said into the microphone. I have in my possession the following documents. First, a notarized letter written by Linda Anderson Mercer on August 15, 2019, attesting to Marcus Holloway's biological paternity of her daughter, Athena. Second, DNA test results from GenTrust Labs, dated November 8, 2023, confirming a 99.97% probability of paternal match between Mr. Holloway and Miss Anderson. She held up a folder, the exact same folder Marcus had shown Richard a week ago. These documents have been authenticated and are available for legal review. There is no ambiguity here. Athena Anderson is Marcus Holloway's biological daughter. The room buzzed with reaction. I saw a reporter from the Denver Business Journal scribbling furiously in a notebook. Phones were out everywhere, recording, texting, posting. Richard's table had become an island of stunned, suffocating silence. The other guests had literally shifted their chairs away from him. No one wanted to be anywhere near this unfolding disaster. One more thing, Eleanor added, her voice crisp. I am also in possession of financial records indicating that Richard Mercer, as trustee of Athena's inheritance from her late mother, withdrew $47,000 from her trust fund over a 5-year period. Legal proceedings to recover those funds will begin Monday morning. Richard stood abruptly, knocking over his champagne glass. He didn't say a word. He just walked out. He didn't get far. Running away, Mercer? Someone's voice cut through the stunned silence. He stopped, turned. His face was a mask of barely controlled fury. This is a setup, he shrieked, his voice cracking, utterly unraveling. Marcus has been trying to destroy me for 20 years. He's using that girl to finish the job. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Richard. The DNA test is fake, Richard continued, striding back toward the stage. The documents are forged. This is all a lie designed to humiliate me. Marcus didn't flinch. GenTrust Labs is one of the most respected facilities in the country, Richard. Their results have been used in thousands of legal proceedings. Are you suggesting they're part of my conspiracy? I'm suggesting you paid them off. And the letter from Linda, your own wife, is that forged too? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. You called my daughter a bastard in front of 50 witnesses, Marcus said, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. You admitted publicly that you knew she wasn't your biological child, and that you resented her for it. You did that before I said a single word. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Everything that's happening to you tonight, Richard, Marcus said, his voice steel. You brought on yourself. Someone in the crowd shouted. What about the trust fund money? Richard's face went pale. That's a private matter. $47,000, another voice called out. From a child's inheritance. That's theft. The crowd was turning. I could feel it. The collective judgment. The social tide. It was dramatically, irrevocably pulling away from Richard, and towards us. Karen appeared, pulling frantically at his arm. Richard, we need to leave. Now. This time, he didn't argue. They practically fled through the side door, leaving their table an empty, stark symbol of their downfall. The Monday after the gala, Eleanor Vance filed suit in Denver County Court. Case number 2024 CD0892. Plaintiff, Athena Anderson. Defendant, Richard Mercer. The complaint was straightforward: breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of trust funds, and failure to properly manage assets held for a minor beneficiary. We were seeking full recovery of the $47,000 Richard had withdrawn, plus interest at 8% annually, plus attorney's fees. The evidence is overwhelming, Eleanor told me during our meeting that afternoon. Her office was on the 17th floor of a downtown high-rise with views of the mountains to the west. Bank statements, withdrawal records, signed authorizations, all in Richard's name. And we have your testimony about what you actually received, nothing. What happens now? I asked. Richard has 30 days to respond. He can settle, or he can fight. But fighting means discovery. And discovery means we get access to all his financial records. She smiled slightly. I don't think he wants that. I thought about the email Marcus had shown me. The one where Richard asked his lawyer about cutting me out of the will. If that email existed, what else was hidden in his files? There's something else, Eleanor continued. The university situation has been resolved. I spoke with the admissions office this morning. They've reviewed the concerns Richard raised and found them baseless. Your enrollment is confirmed. Relief washed over me. Thank you? Don't thank me. Thank yourself? You built an impeccable record despite everything working against you. Richard's accusations only made him look petty and vindictive. I left Eleanor's office feeling lighter than I had in years. The legal process would take time, months probably, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Richard had spent 18 years making me feel utterly powerless. But that was over. Now. Richard's lawyer called Eleanor on April 10th, 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. They want to settle, Eleanor told me over the phone. Full repayment of the $47,000, plus $8,500 in accrued interest, plus our legal fees of $12,000. They're also agreeing to transfer the remaining balance of your mother's trust fund immediately. I did the math in my head. That's over $200,000 total? $200,500 to be precise, she confirmed. And they're not contesting anything. No discovery, no depositions, no trial. Why? Because Richard can't afford the scrutiny. The gala was a disaster for him, professionally and personally. His partners at Mercer Holloway have been distancing themselves ever since. A prolonged legal battle would only make things worse. The settlement was signed on April 15th, exactly 1 month to the day after my 18th birthday. I didn't attend. I didn't need to see Richard's face as he wrote the check. I didn't need his apology, which, according to Eleanor, he never even offered. What I needed was closure. And that's exactly what I got. The money was deposited into my account 3 days later. I stared at the balance on my phone screen for a long time. $200,500. It wasn't really about the money. Not truly. It was about being seen. Being acknowledged. Being told, finally, that what happened to me was wrong. Richard had spent 18 years making me feel utterly worthless. Now, he had literally paid for that mistake. Marcus took me to dinner the night the settlement money arrived. A quiet Italian restaurant in Lodo, the kind of place with white tablecloths and candles flickering in wine bottles. I want to pay for your college, he said after we'd ordered. All of it. Tuition, housing, books. Everything. I gently set down my water glass. I appreciate that, Marcus, I said softly. But no. He looked genuinely surprised. Why not? Because I've spent 18 years proving I don't need anyone, I replied. I'm not going to start depending on someone now. Not even you. Athena, I'm your father. It's not dependence. It's family. I know. I reached across the table and touched his hand. And I'm grateful you're in my life. But I need to do this myself. The trust fund money, my scholarship. That's enough. More than enough. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and I could see him wrestling with it, the natural instinct to provide, battling against the recognition that I needed my own autonomy. Your mother raised you well, he finally said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. She did, I agreed, squeezing his hand back. Okay, he said, his eyes serious. But if you ever need anything at all, I'm here. No strings attached. I know, I said, and for the first time, truly felt it. We finished dinner talking about other things, his business, my plans for college, the apartment I was looking at near campus. Normal father-to-daughter conversation. Or at least, what I imagined normal father-to-daughter conversation should sound like. I didn't need Marcus's money to prove I was worthy. I had already proven that, every single day, for 18 years. The fallout for Richard was swift. And absolutely brutal. It started the very night of the gala, when the Chamber of Commerce quietly, almost imperceptibly, withdrew his Developer of the Year nomination. No announcement, no explanation, just a brief email to attendees the next morning stating that, due to unforeseen circumstances, the award will not be presented this year. But that was just the beginning. On April 10th, the same day Richard's lawyer called to negotiate the settlement, Sterling Investment Group pulled out of a joint development project that had been in the works for 18 months. The deal was worth $12 million. According to the email Richard received, which somehow found its way to the Denver Business Journal, the Sterling CEO wrote, "We cannot associate our brand with individuals whose personal conduct raises questions about ethical judgment." The article ran on April 15th under the headline, "Family Scandal Casts Shadow Over Former Mercer Holloway Executive." Former, because by then, Richard was already gone. The board of directors at Mercer Holloway Properties held an emergency meeting on May 1st. I wasn't there, obviously, but Marcus had sources inside the company. The vote was unanimous. Richard would resign, effective immediately, with a modest severance package and a strict non-disclosure agreement. The official press release cited personal reasons and a desire to spend more time with family. No one believed it. Within 2 months, Richard Mercer had lost his award, his biggest deal, and his entire career. The house in Highlands Ranch went on the market in June. Karen, apparently, decided that living in a neighborhood where everyone knew everything was unbearable. I didn't feel joy at Richard's downfall. No wild vindication or triumphant glee. What I felt was something far quieter. Something deep and profoundly peaceful. For 18 years, Richard had held power over me. He had controlled where I lived, what I ate, whether I felt welcome in my own home. He had made me feel small and worthless and invisible. Now the world could see him for exactly who he was. And I was finally free. Karen and Tyler were collateral damage in Richard's implosion. I didn't plan it that way, but I couldn't pretend I hadn't anticipated it. Karen disappeared from social media within a week of the gala. Her Instagram, where she'd posted carefully curated photos of her perfect family, went private, then vanished entirely. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd stopped attending her book club, her tennis lessons, her charity committee meetings. I felt no sympathy. Her silence, her inaction, it made her complicit. Tyler was different. He was 14, old enough to understand what had happened. Young enough that I couldn't hold him fully responsible. He'd grown up believing the narrative Richard fed him, that I was the outsider, the problem, the reason their family wasn't perfect. 3 months after the gala, I received a text message from an unknown number. Athena, it's Tyler. I got your number from Mom's phone. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad things were for you. I should have paid attention. I should have said something. I stared at that message for a long, long time. Part of me, the hopeful part, wanted to respond immediately. To tell him it was okay. To maybe, just maybe, rebuild something. But another part, the part that had spent 18 years being completely invisible, needed more time. So much more time. I typed back. Thank you for reaching out. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I appreciate you saying this. He replied. I understand. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. I saved his number, but didn't add him to my contacts. Maybe someday. But not today. Not yet. In August, I moved to Boulder. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom unit in a complex near campus with a view of the Flatirons from the kitchen window. I furnished it with second-hand finds from thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace. A blue couch, a wooden desk, a bed frame that squeaked when I rolled over at night. It was small. It was second-hand. And it was perfect. The trust fund money sat in a savings account, earning modest interest. I used it for tuition and rent, meticulously budgeting so it would last all 4 years. My scholarship covered the rest. I didn't touch a single penny of Marcus's money. I didn't need to. Classes started the last week of August. I enrolled as a business major with a minor in communications. My professors were demanding, my course load heavy, but I thrived in ways I never had in high school. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who didn't know my history, who judged me only by what I showed them. I got a part-time job at a small real estate firm downtown, not Marcus's company, not anything connected to Richard, just a local agency that needed someone to answer phones and organize files. The pay was modest, but the experience was invaluable. Marcus visited once a month, always on a Sunday. We'd have brunch at a cafe on Pearl Street, talking about classes and work and the slow process of getting to know each other. He never pushed. Never tried to buy my affection. He just showed up. Consistently. The way a father should. By October, I'd made friends. By November, I'd started dating a guy from my economics class, Jake, a Colorado native with an easy laugh and zero knowledge of my complicated past. I didn't tell him about Richard or the gala or the lawsuit. Not yet. That story belonged to my past. And I was finally, gloriously, building something entirely new. For the first time in 18 years, I woke up every single morning without dread. I woke up with hope. Pure, unfiltered hope. 6 months after the gala, Richard sent me an email. I almost deleted it without reading. His name in my inbox felt like a violation. A cold reminder of everything I'd fought so hard to leave behind. But morbid curiosity, I guess, got the better of me. Athena, it read, I know I have no right to contact you, but I've had time to think about what happened, and I realize I owe you an explanation. Maybe even an apology. I'd like to talk, if you're willing. Richard, no. Dear Athena. No. Sincerely. Just a vague, hollow gesture towards reconciliation. As if 18 years of calculated cruelty could be erased with a single, pathetic email. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I called Eleanor Vance. I want to send him a message through your office. I told Eleanor. Something official. Something final. She understood immediately. The letter was sent 3 days later, on Vance and Associates letterhead. Mr. Mercer, Ms. Anderson has received your communication dated September 22nd. She has asked me to convey the following response. You had 18 years to treat me with basic human decency. You chose not to. You knew the truth about my parentage and used it as justification for neglect and emotional abuse. You stole from my inheritance. You attempted to sabotage my education and my future. I am not interested in your explanations or your apologies. I do not wish to have any further contact with you. This is not revenge. This is a boundary. Please do not attempt to reach me again. Athena Anderson. Richard never responded. I don't know if he was angry, hurt, or relieved. I didn't care. Some people deserve second chances. Richard Mercer was not one of them. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't mean letting someone back into your life to hurt you again. Sometimes, forgiveness just means letting go. And walking away. For good. Building a relationship with Marcus was like learning a new language. We had the basics: shared DNA, shared features, a shared, desperate desire to connect. But true fluency, that would take years. Our monthly brunches became a ritual. He'd drive down from Denver on Sunday mornings, always arriving at exactly 10 a.m. We'd order the same things: avocado toast for me, eggs Benedict for him, and talk about everything and nothing. Some days were easy. We'd discuss his latest business deal or my upcoming exams, laughing at bad jokes and discovering shared interests. He loved jazz. So did I. He hated cilantro. So did I. Tiny things, but they were ours. Other days were harder. There were silences that stretched too long. Questions that had no good answers. How do you summarize 18 years of complete absence? How do you grieve a relationship that, for so long, never even existed? I'm not trying to replace the time we lost, Marcus told me once, stirring his coffee. I know that's impossible. I just want to be here for whatever comes next. That's enough, I said. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. On my 19th birthday, Marcus drove to Boulder with a small cake and a card. No extravagant gifts, no grand gestures, just the two of us in my tiny apartment, eating chocolate cake and watching the sunset paint the Flatirons pink and gold. Happy birthday, Athena, he said. Thanks, Dad. It was the first time I'd ever called him that. And my voice didn't even waver. His eyes glistened, but he didn't make a big deal of it. Neither did I. Some things don't need words. They just are. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd never found that letter. If I'd never reached out to Marcus. If I'd just accepted Richard's $50 and faded into the world, another forgotten child of a broken home. Another statistic. But I did find the letter. I did reach out. And everything changed. Here's what I learned from 18 years of being invisible. First, your worth is never determined by how others treat you. Richard saw me as a mistake, a burden, a living, breathing reminder of his wife's perceived betrayal. But his warped perception was never my reality. I was always more than he saw. Second, boundaries are not selfish. They are absolutely essential. Cutting Richard out of my life wasn't revenge. It was pure, unadulterated self-preservation. I don't owe anyone access to my peace. Third, family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up for you. Who choose you. Who love you, without conditions. Marcus and I share DNA, yes. But what makes him my father is the unwavering effort he puts in, every single day. I'm a sophomore now, crushing my business classes, dreaming of starting my own real estate company someday. Not to compete with Richard, or even Marcus. Just to prove to myself that I can build something from nothing. Because that's what I've always done. That's who I am. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or invisible, I see you. Your story isn't over. The people who dismissed you don't get to write your ending. You do. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the very end of this journey. Now I have a question for all of you out there. If you were me, would you have responded to Richard's email? Would you have given him that chance, or do you agree with my decision? Let me know in the comments below. I truly want to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss my next one. Until then, take care of yourselves.